everyone, and welcome to the Senior Delights Black History Program. We're so glad to see so many of you out this morning, and we hope that you will enjoy the program we put together for you. History is often reduced to a handful of memorable moments and events. In Black history, those events often include courageous stories like those of the Underground Railroad, historical moments like the famous I Have a Dream speech by Dr. Martin Luther King. But these are only a few of the significant and important events to know and remember. In an effort to honor this expansive growing history, Black history was established by way of a weekly celebration known as Negro History Week, which was established by the historian Carter G. Woodson. But just as Black history is more than just a month, so too are the numerous events and figures that are often overlooked during it. Our program today will highlight some of those absent African American women who have contributed to our Black culture.
I am the change that I wanted to see. I refused to wait for my destiny. I made it happen with work and action. All I had to do is believe. Good morning. My name is Mae Jemison, and I am the youngest of 3 children. We were really blessed because our parents always taught us that it was possible to achieve your goals. And they also worked very hard so that we could pursue our interests. Now, I was kind of torn. I couldn't make up my mind whether I should be a medical doctor or I should be a professional dancer. But my mother gave me some words of wisdom. She said, baby, you can always dance if you're a doctor. But if you're a doctor, you cannot be a professional dancer. Well, she was right, and I'm going to come back to that later. I want to tell you a little bit about my schooling. I graduated from high school when I was 16 years old, and I received a scholarship to Stanford University. I went there, and I got a double major, one in chemical engineering and the other one in African American studies. Then I went on to Cornell University, where I got my Doctor of Medicine degree. And I practiced general medicine for several years, and I ended up becoming a medical doctor for the Peace Corps. And I was stationed in Sierra Leone and Libya. While I was in Sierra Leone, I was only there for 2 weeks, and a patient came in, and another doctor diagnosed them with malaria. Well, they just weren't getting better. And so I had the opportunity to check that patient out. And I discovered that they had meningitis. So I ordered a plane to take them to Germany, where they would be able to get better care there. Well, the next thing I knew, I was getting a call from the embassy. They said they would have me investigated because they weren't sure that I had the authority to do such a thing, because just initiating the process would cost $80,000. So I tried to remain very calm because I was thinking about the health of the patient, and I explained to them that when I make a diagnosis, I do not need anyone else's opinion to decide what the treatment is going to be. So they went on, they got the plane. I stayed up 56 hours taking care of that patient. We got to Germany, and they survived. And I was told it was because of my decision making that that patient's life was saved. Did I mention to you that I speak 4 languages? You know, I really don't want to sound like I'm bragging. Maybe just a little bit. After everything I've been through, you know, there was so much prejudice at those universities. Most of the time I felt like I didn't even exist. I'd raise my hand and they'd look over, around, and through me. But God blessed me, and I was able to persevere. So don't mind me if I toot my horn just a little bit. Because I have found out if you don't toot your own horn, it will be a very long time before you have the opportunity to hear it again. Now let me tell you about NASA. I developed a love for science because one of my uncles introduced me to that. And I used to love watching Star Trek because it was about outer space. And I decided to apply. Well, after a disaster occurred at NASA, I had to reapply. And I knew there was the tiniest of chances that I would be accepted into the program because there were only 15 people being chosen out of the 2,000 applicants. But sure enough, in September of 1992, I was part of the crew members on the spaceship. And I was the mission specialist. I did tests on myself and the other crew members on motion sickness and on cell research. And it was really very exciting, a surreal experience. And I took several things with me. I took a picture of a dance studio because of my love of dance, and I also feel there's a strong correlation between science and dance because it's about communication. I also took some relics from some of the African countries because I believe that space should be for everyone. And then I took a photo of Bessie Coleman, who was the first African-American woman to fly an airplane. So all in all, it was a wonderful experience. However, I did decide the following year in 1993 that I would retire from NASA. Now, there were some people that were very upset about that because they felt that they had spent a lot of money training me. But other opportunities came my way, and I was excited about pursuing some of my other interests. So, what happened then was that I ended up authoring some books. I ended up teaching at several Ivy League schools. I had the opportunity to influence minority students to get involved in science classes. And I had the opportunity to be on quite a few TV programs, one of which was Star Trek, which was a special delight for me. So all in all, life was really great for me. Now remember in the beginning I told you that my mother had told me that I could be a doctor, but I couldn't be a professional dancer at the same time, and that she was right. So when I retired from being a doctor, I had a dance studio built into my own home, and I was able to choreograph a couple of television programs, one on jazz dancing, and the other one was on African dancing. And my point for telling you this is not to brag, but I want you to know that you can have it all. Not necessarily at the same time, but you must stay focused on your dreams, and you can be successful. So I want to encourage you, reach for the stars, and I'll see you up there.
I am the change that I wanted to see. I refused to wait on my destiny. I made it happen through work and action. All I had to do is believe. On June 30th, 2015, I, Misty Copeland, became the first African-American woman to be promoted to principal dancer for the American Ballet Theater. Just to put things into perspective, the American Ballet Theater has been around since 1939 and is recognized as one of the leading world classical ballet theaters. In its 75-year history, I am the first African-American principal dancer. My first performance as principal dancer was Swan Lake, which I just displayed. And as I stood there about to perform, I started thinking back of all I had to go through to get to that point. Thinking back to my childhood in San Pedro, California, I remember my mother, a woman who had 4 husbands and 6 children, and struggled to feed us, and we stayed in motel rooms. I remember a childhood with no father and very little stability. I remember people telling me, "You'll never be a ballet dancer. You're too fat. Your breasts are too big. You don't have the right body shape. You have too many curves." They just mentioned everything that just tried to tear me down. But then I remembered my first time in a ballet studio at a Boys and Girls Club in San Pedro. I remember standing there, watching, admiring, and amazement, and just watching as they were dancing. Finally, I stepped out onto the dance floor. And for the first time, looking in those mirrors, looking at me dancing, I felt beautiful. Most people, it was most people start as toddlers and perfect their craft over the next 10 to 15 years. But it took me only 2. By the time I was 15, I was fielding professional offers. I got accepted into the American Ballet Theater at age 17, only 4 years into dance. People call me a prodigy, and maybe I am to some degree. Although I never intended on being a role model, little girls of color can see a positive image of a woman of color dancing in ways that isn't overly sexualized and defying the odds and disproving myths about body types. Now that I'm 35 years old, I'm doing what I was born to do. Traveling all over the world, dancing in front of thousands of people in hopes that one or many little girls of color can somewhere see me and know that her impossible dream is possible. Thank you.
I am the change I wanted to see. I refused to wait on my destiny. I made it happen through work and action. all I had to do was believe. My name is Michelle Roberts. I am the Executive Director of the National Basketball Players Association. I am the first woman to head a major professional sports union in North America. Not only am I the first African American woman, I am the first woman, period. My job is to make sure the rights of NBA players are protected and they have the right to receive the maximum opportunities to achieve their goals, whether on the courts or off the courts. Now, I'll tell you a little bit about myself. I was born in 1956, raised in the Melrose Housing Project in South Bronx, New York. Living in a house with two brothers and one TV, you learn to like basketball. And that's where my love for basketball began. My mother stressed the importance of an education. Her influence inspired me to achieve academic excellency. I received a scholarship in my sophomore year in high school to go to Master's School, an elite prep school in Dobbs Ferry, New York. After that, I went to college, where I received my BA at Wesleyan University, and thereafter my law degree at UCLA. After college, I became a public defender in Washington, D.C., staying in that position for 8 years, rising to become a much sought-after trial lawyer. After 30 plus years as an attorney, I decided to seek other career options. I found out about the NBA PA on the news, and I started inquiring about that position. There were 300 applicants, but even though I didn't have any experience, the players voted me because of my track record as a lawyer. I am a woman who represents several hundred NBA athletes. The majority of the people that I dealt with were men. League officials, agents, owners of teams, even reporters. As a union representative, my job is to ensure my players' privacies are not infringed. As I told my players, my past is littered with the bones of men who were foolish enough to think that I was someone that they could sleep on. Sharks are born swimming. I have been on this job for 3 years, and there is still a lot more to do. And I am the woman to get the job done.
I am the change I want to see. I refuse to wait for my destiny. I made it happen through work and action, and all I had to do was believe. My name is Norma Spark, and I am the first African American woman to be licensed in the American Institute of Architects, and also the first woman to become a licensed architect in the states of California and New York. Now that you know who I am, I'm going to tell you what an architect is. An architect is a person that reviews and designs buildings. It's more than just drawing. You must have social skills. You must have knowledge of engineering, math, science, physics. You also must have drive and dedication. You know, the mind is a terrible thing. The mind is a important thing. I remember exactly how many times I applied to get a job before I was hired. It was 19. 19 times before anybody would hire me. On the 20th try, I got a job working for the New York Department of Public Works. I worked there for 4 years. Then I got my big break. I got a job working for the prestigious company Owen, Merrill, and Skidmore as a licensed architect. I stayed there in New York. Then later I decided to move to California. In California, I worked for Growing and Associates. I worked there 20 years and honored my practice. You know, being an architect is more than just building a beautiful structure. You also have to know the components that will work together in making that building lasting, safe, and sound. So all of these years that I worked in New York and in California, I did so. Some of my most significant structures are this one right here. It's the Terminal 1 building at the Los Angeles International Airport. I also did the Commons Courthouse in Indianapolis, Indiana, City Hall in San Bernardino, California, and also in 1976, the U.S. Embassy in Tokyo, Japan. Even though I did a lot more projects, those are the ones that they just gave me credit for because of my gender and my race. You know, hate can be a very, very bad emotion. But those were the times. But one thing my parents always told me, they said, Norma, anything that's worthwhile and that you get the greatest amount of satisfaction comes with hard work and perseverance. And that has been my motto since I was a child. Norma passed away in 2012 at the age of 85. This light of mine, I'm gonna let it shine. This little light of mine, I'm gonna let it shine. This little light of mine, I'm gonna let it shine. Let it shine, let it shine, let it shine. Everywhere I go, I'm gonna let it shine. Everywhere I go, I'm gonna let it shine. Everywhere I go, I'm gonna let it shine. Let it shine, let it shine, let it shine.
Quiet on the set. Lights, camera, action. My name is Ava Duvernay. I am the change that I wanted to see. I refused to wait for my destiny. I made it happen through work and action. All I had to do was believe. As I said, my name is Ava Duvernay, and I am from Compton, which is known as the hood in Los Angeles. I grew up in a neighborhood that had an array of brown people, but I went to an all-girls Catholic school from grades 1 through 12, which was a lot of gray skirts. Now, my Aunt Denise gave me the love of film, and she used film as
windows into the world. And my love of film began as a young child. And my favorite film growing up was West Side Story, because it reminded me of my neighborhood and just how talented people are. I went to UCLA and I graduated, and after 4 years, I started my career as a film publicist. Now, after doing that for 4 years, I decided that I should open my own film publicity firm, which I did. And soon, I was getting offers from Hollywood studios and directors. And it was during that time that I got to see how films were actually made. And after watching the directors and looking at everything that was involved, I said to myself, I can do that. So after 14 years of owning my own firm, I decided that I was going to start making my own films. My first feature film was called I Will Follow, and it was about the life of an African-American woman, and studios weren't too interested in that at that time, so they didn't want to finance it. So through blood, sweat, and tears, I financed it myself for $50,000. My second film was titled Middle of Nowhere, and I again had to put a lot of my own money into it, and I submitted it to several film festivals, and finally the Sundance Film Festival accepted my submission. And that year at the Sundance Film Festival, I received the Best Directors Award. And that was the first time that award was won by an African-American female. My next film was Selma, which was about Dr. Martin Luther King Jr. And because of my work on that film, I became the first female Black director to be nominated for a Golden Globe, and the first Black female director to be nominated for an Academy Award for Best Picture. In 2017, I was nominated for an Academy Award for Best Documentary Film. It was titled 13th, which aired on the Netflix network, which dealt with race in the criminal justice system. My next film, coming soon to a theater near you, is titled A Wrinkle in Time. And I will be the first African-American female director to direct a film with a $100 million budget. Woo. Now, on the TV side, I am the creator and co-executive director for the TV series Queen Sugar, which airs on the Oprah Winfrey Network. Now, my recent successes in Hollywood gave me a voice in which I could point out the shortcomings. And although the entertainment industry is doing better, we still have a long way to go. We have to recognize that inclusion is necessary and diversity is necessary. My question to you now is, what is it that you stand for?
We are the world. We are the women. We are the ones who make a brighter day. So let's keep giving. Without the choice we're making, we're saving our own lives. It's true, we'll make a brighter day for you and me. We are the world. We are the women. We are the ones that make a brighter day. So let's keep giving.
brighter day, so let's keep giving. There's a choice we're making. We're saving our own lives. It's true, we'll make a brighter day for you and me.
Destiny is not a matter of chance, it's a matter of choice. It's not a thing to be waited for, it's a thing to be achieved. So what are you waiting for? Go achieve your destiny. Thank you. We are the City of the Lights, and again, we would like to thank you. Thank you, Jane. Thank you for allowing us to come perform. And at this time, we would just like to introduce ourselves.
Greta Fouché,
Linda Morton,
Wendy Ragland.
Len Hubbard,
Dee Dee Mitchell. Again, thank you, and we hope you enjoyed our program.
we love you.